Arahang Sama Sambuddho Sawakato Yena Bhagavata Dhammo Supatipano Yasa Bhagavato Sawaka Sangho Dhammayang Bhagavantang Sadhammang Sasangang Imehi Sakare Hiyatarahang Aropite Hiyabhipujayama Sadhuno Bante Bhagava Suchira Parinibbhutopi Pachima Janata Nukampamanasa Ime Sak Karabhute Patiganhatu Amhakak Dikharatang Hitaya Sukhaya Arahang Sama Sambuddho Bhagava Buddhang Bhagavantang Abhivadeni Suwakato Bhagavata Dhammo Dhammang Namasami Supatipano Bhagavato Sawaka Sangho Sanghang Namami Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Sama Sambuddhassa Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Sama Sambuddhassa Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Sama Sambuddhassa Iti piso Bhagava Arahang Sama Sambuddho Vija Charana Sampano Sugato Lokavidu Anuttaro Purissa Dhammasarati Sata Deva Manu Sanang Buddho Bhagava Tamahang Bhagavantang Abhipujayami Tamahang Bhagavantang Sirasa Namami Suwakato Bhagavata Dhammo Sanditiko Akaliko Ehipasiko Opanayiko Pachatak Veditabo Vinyuhi Tamahang Dhammang Abhipujayami Tamahang Dhammang Sirasa Namami Supatipano Bhagavato Sawaka Sangho Ujjupatipano Bhagavato Sawaka Sangho Yaya Patipano Bhagavato Sawaka Sangho Sami ชิปาติปันโนภะคะวะโตสาวกสังโฆยะติตังชะทาริปุริสายุกานิอัตถปุริสปุกลาเอสะภะคะวะโตสาวกสังโฆอาหุเนโยภาหุเนโยตาคิเนโยอัญชลิกรณิโยอนุตตรปุญญเขตโลกัสสะธัมมังสังฆังอภิปูชยามิธัมมังสังฆังศิรสานามามิ This is what should be done by one who is skilled in goodness and who knows the path of peace. Let them be able and upright, straightforward and gentle in speech, humble and not conceited, contented and easily satisfied, not busy with duties, and frugal in their ways, peaceful and calm, and wise and skillful, not proud and demanding in nature. Let them not do the slightest thing that the wise would later reprove, wishing in gladness and in safety. May all beings be happy. Whatever living beings there may be, whether they are weak or strong, omitting none, the great or the mighty, medium, short or small, the seen and the unseen, those living near and far away, those born and to be born, may all beings be happy. Let none deceive another, or despise any being in any state. Let none through anger or ill will wish harm upon another, even as a mother protects with her life her child, her only child, so with a boundless heart should one cherish all living beings, radiating kindness over the entire world, spreading upwards to the skies and downwards to the depths, outwards and unbounded, freed from hatred and ill will, whether standing or walking, seated or lying down, freed from drowsiness. One should sustain this recollection. This is said to be the sublime abiding, by not holding to false views, the pure-hearted one, having clarity of vision, being from all sense desires, is not born again into this world. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Oh dear. Work. Excellent. The questions. Here we go. Question number 1. I would like to have... It's a question for me. Okay. I would like to have a biological child at some point in the near future, but I wonder if it is ethical with the current impending climate changes destroying the planet. Should I adopt instead? That's a very good, nice point. Because if you want a biological child, it's true. I mean, there's lots of difficulties in the planet, it's crowded. And one of the things is that if you do adopt a child, with so many kids who really do suffer because they don't have sort of a parents. So I would actually say that's a very nice choice. Or if you don't want to actually adopt a child, one thing you can do, you're thinking of having a kid, come to Bodhinyana Danya. Because Danya, she used to be the caretaker of this place years ago, and she's got 3 kids, and they were really noisy this morning when they came to monastery. And then she told us, she said, we take them to Bodhinyana Monastery on purpose. So the monks there, especially the young monks, can actually see what children are really like. So any monk who's thinking of had enough of being a monk will think twice and stay in a nice, peaceful, free, no worries environment. Now, basically, the question you're really asking is sometimes it's nice if there were more Buddhists in this world who are kind and compassionate and virtuous. They can somehow learn not to damage the planet so much. So you say, well, at least if you bring some Buddhist kids in the world, they may be amazing, maybe helping this world, saving this world. So basically, to sum up, I don't know what I'm talking about. I haven't had kids. So there's always the positives and the negatives there. Anyway, okay, I don't know this. When a Lakota Sioux, Native American culture boy, comes of age, he is sent away from his tribe for 3 days to meditate, to discover which animal clan he belongs to. Usually he has some form of hallucination of a wolf, bird, or horse, which becomes his lifetime totem. So after 3 days of fasting alone in 12th grade, while sitting in the crux of a forest tree, the most vivid of female black panthers came strolling into my campsite from right to left. She was strong and sure-footed, more like a larger cat, my lifelong identity, yet in my meditation was untrained. Are fully formed ideations, hallucinations valid? That's a very nice question. It's sometimes, the dreams, imaginations, and reality. Sometimes, a lot of times people feel, what is actually real? How much of this world do you actually create with your wanting? How many times do you bend perception actually to, it's not consciously, unconsciously bend perception to fit some other way of looking at this world. And there's more to that than meets the eye. Sometimes, if you grow up in a sort of like a New York culture, that you can see the world in a totally different way than you can if you see it in other cultures. It was one of the interesting byproducts of becoming a monk in northeast Thailand, which is what I did. Because once you were a monk, in that village culture, which was very different in many ways than other parts of Thailand, other parts of Southeast Asia, and even the language was different. Not just different words, but different structures. One of those examples, when you saw someone, and if I was senior, I would say, how can you describe this? For example, who you were talking to. If I was talking to a boy, a man, I'd say crap. And if I was talking to a girl, I'd say crap. But if a girl was talking to me, she'd say ka. And if a boy was talking to me, he'd say, it doesn't matter, for me it was like, hello sir, hello madam, but it was the other way round. Madam would say madam, sir would say sir, no matter who they were talking with. And there's little differences in culture like that. You may think they're small things, but they had big impacts. I started to see that it's not just different language, but just different basis of where you're coming from. Another example of that, there was outside our monastery in northeast Thailand, there was this man, a local villager. He went to one of the parties, he got totally drunk, and he was riding on a bicycle on the wrong side of the road with no headlights. The headlights weren't working, and he got hit by a bus and killed. So we actually did the funeral for him, but we had to carry him from the road first of all. And he was not the one that was culpable. The bus driver was culpable in Thai law. Because the Thai law, they thought, you are the more powerful vehicle, the bigger vehicle. You have to take responsibility, even for people who are drunk, driving on a bicycle without any lights on the wrong side of the road. Nevertheless, the bus driver was the one who was culpable. And that took me a long time to really get my head around that way of looking at things. More power, bigger vehicle, then you are responsible. Even though that poor bus driver, what can you do? The fellow was drunk. He was on the wrong side of a busy road and no headlights on. But nevertheless, the bus driver should have been looking out for him. So I don't judge what is the best way of interpreting something like the law, but it was just different. And seeing things expressed in a different way just showed me like different cultures do have sometimes totally different ways of living in this world. So if that was your lifelong identity, then wonderful. Does that help you? Does that make your life just a richer form of existence? Really, I don't think it will make it better or worse, but it gives you more opportunities to make things better or worse. I'm not sure about you, but do you have affinity with some sort of animal? This is weird for me to say, but if I said if I had a link with any type of animal, if I'm close to any type of animal, I must admit it would be snakes. I don't know just why I can say that with honesty. Every time you see a snake, you have a lot of respect for them, and almost like the sense that I won't harm you. I can kind of feel what it's like, to be a snake. You're just doing your lifestyle, and most other people are really afraid of you. Imagine living a life like that, where people are afraid of you, even though you don't want to harm them or do anything to them. So, because I have an affinity for things like snakes, I've never ever come even close to being bitten by them, and always feel so much kindness and compassion towards them. I don't know why, but you think you'll never ever be bitten by a snake. You always feel confident, when there's a snake around. Okay, you can stay in your corner of the hut, I'll stay in my corner of the hut. And just, almost like a gentleman's agreement. It's kind of weird, so you don't usually talk about that, but sometimes that's how you feel. So if you have an identity with like a black panther there, and that's, your totem or whatever, wonderful. Make use of that. Well, I ask, what do you think about fortune telling? I do know that, I remember one of the first times I went to Hong Kong, they took me down this street where all the fortune tellers ply their trade. And I remember telling, probably Gerald at the time, look at those fortune tellers. They were all thin, wearing just ordinary people's clothes. And I said, one of my sayings, never trust a poor fortune teller. If they can't tell their own fortune and make a bit of money, then they can't tell yours. But the other story, you've all heard this one for sure. I said in one of my books, it's Ajahn Chah. It was against our rules as monks to tell fortunes, especially for money. And so one day this young man, he asked Ajahn Chah, please tell my fortune, please read the lines on my hand and let me know how I'm going to turn out, what my fortune's going to be. And then Ajahn Chah said, no, good monks don't do that. But this young man was very smart, he had it all prepared. He said, but Ajahn Chah, you've always told me the importance of gratitude. I have been looking after you. I wash your robe, I bring you special food. If you need a lift to go to the train station, I'm the one who takes you there. I will drop everything to help you. And I've just served you so many months and years of my life, and it's the first time I've asked you for something, and you say no. So Ajahn said, okay, give me your hand. And this was the first and only time that Ajahn Chah read the lines on a man's palm to tell his fortune. You can imagine how excited he was. And Ajahn Chah was tracing the lines on the palm of his hand really slowly. He said, well, if you really want to be accurate, you have to pay full attention. And as he was drawing his finger along the lines of the palm of this man's hand, every now and again he would stop. And sometimes he would smile. But he wouldn't explain why he said instead of ooh. And this man was just getting more and more excited. And he couldn't help to just interrupt and say, what's my fortune going to be? What's my fortune going to be? So just wait a moment. Oh. And then when Ajahn Chah actually finished and gave the man his hand back, Ajahn Chah said, I did this very mindfully. This is the first time I've done this, but I'll guarantee that I won't misinterpret the lines on your hand. Yes, I know. But what's actually the future going to be? Looking at your hand, I've got a very accurate description. What I tell you now is actually true. It's going to happen. Yes, I know, but what is it? And Ajahn Chah looked at him and said, your future, sir. Yes, yes, yes. Your future is uncertain.
And Ajahn Chah wasn't wrong. As for me, it's my birthday's coming up. How many weeks? About a month, isn't it? 3 weeks? 3 weeks. And sometimes people always ask, Ajahn Brahm, you've looked after me, and just between you and I, can I get you a special birthday present? Something for you? And I say, nope. If you ask me, I'd always say no. But this gentleman, he was really smart. He was from Malacca in Malaysia. He used to be a lawyer before. And he's very, very smart. And he didn't even ask me what I wanted. He just presented it to me on my birthday. He said, I found out exactly where you were born, and not just the date of your birthday, but the time as well. And I paid a lot of money to get one of the most well-known and famous astrologers in Malaysia to get your horoscope. And I now want to present your horoscope for the coming year, he said. And it's very hard to get this astrologer to do these personal horoscopes in detail. But I've done it, and it's my little gift to recognize all the service you've done to our family. And he said, is it okay if I read it out? And so, yes, please. And so this is a horoscope for Ajahn Brahm, born on the 7th of August 1951. This coming year, just in briefly, like executive summary, this coming year will be an excellent year for romance. That's what it said. It wasn't right. He wasted his money. I told him, you should have got a guarantee. Just a money-back guarantee, but it didn't work out. I'm still a monk, that was many years ago. So that's what I think of fortune-telling. Nobody knows. Dear Ajahn, may I ask, what do you think... Oh, that's a fortune-telling. Do it again. I didn't see that coming. As a Buddhist, how do we repel or reject black magic sent to us or our family, and how to avoid it? Thank you. I remember seeing one of the nuns in UK some years ago, and her mum came to visit when I was giving a talk at the London Buddhist Society. And people give you gifts and things afterwards. And I received some black magic. Yeah, and I don't exaggerate, some black magic. And so I gave it to this nun's mum. She said, oh, thank you, that was one of her favourite chocolates. Black magic is a brand of chocolates. So that's how I received black magic. It's just too rich for me, so I used to give it to somebody else. Sorry, I just looked at your face when I said I gave it to somebody else and somebody gave it to me. What you're talking about is like the black magic of spells or curses or someone wanting to do harm to you. And I did mention one of those cases of black magic, the real black magic, trying to sort of do some harm on other people. Over in Thailand, and especially in Cambodia, that the black magic, how it worked, was that some people just had control over some of these Buddhist bad spirits. And this is what we got just from what happened. And anyone who tries to use those little demons to try and hurt somebody, it's always a very, very dangerous business, and it usually doesn't work. But this particular case, there was a woman who used to go to our temple in Wat Banana Chat. She was a very good person and would always come on the moon days. She would keep precepts. And one day she was washing her face in the mirror early in the morning, and instead of her own face, she saw like a monster's face. This is not a joke, this is real. A monster's face in the mirror. And of course she freaked out. And the monster's face disappeared. And then, of course, her mum and grandma told the monks, and the monks went to the house, to do some chanting. And during the chanting, I forget actually which person it was, went into like a trance. And then when she came out of the trance, the senior monk there just asked her, "Who are you?" And then it was this monster. And he said that he had been hired by this young man who was rejected by this girl. He'd fallen in love with her. She didn't like her at all, like him. And so he was so upset, he decided to use one of these monsters to kill this girl. And at this little discussion, the monk, if anyone wants to know who it was this monk called Ajahn. He was one of Ajahn Chah's senior disciples. And he said to this monster, "Look, this girl is such a good, keeps such good virtue. She actually keeps 5 precepts. She doesn't drink, no alcohol or wine or anything. She basically doesn't lie, and she's a really good person. And every moon day she goes to the temple. And she's such a well-behaved young woman. There's no way in the world you'll be able to get close enough to her to harm her." And that's what the monster admitted, that he'd been trying to get close enough to harm her for about 3 years and hadn't managed yet. And so the monster admitted it was a lost cause trying to harm this girl. So when the monk said, "Leave her alone," the monster said, "If I do leave her alone, then I will have to die." And that's when the monk said, "Actually, it's better that you die than you kill somebody else." And strange as it may seem, the monster said yes. And so the monk gave this monster 5 precepts. The 5 Buddhist precepts, Panatipata, Vairamani. And the monster repeated them through this girl who was entranced. And then the girl came out of the trance, and that was the end of the problem. What it was actually saying is how these things actually work. You are protected by your virtue. That's not just saying it to encourage people to keep precepts. That's actually true. And another similar case is much more benign. There was one of the Thai ladies here who came here many years ago. She was such a hard worker, such an amazingly actually smart woman. And she realized that her mother was alone in Thailand. No one was really there to look after her. So she brought her mother into Perth on a close relations migrant scheme. So that, I forget what the deal was, but your mother alone over in a place like Thailand could come and stay in Australia and get a visa to stay here. And she couldn't speak much English, but because monks here, some of the monks here can speak Thai, she would always be coming over to this monastery. But eventually she got sick, old age sicknesses, and she went into one of the hospitals here in Perth. And this lady, the daughter, The way that people look after your parents, in Southeast Asia, is really amazing. She stopped everything else she was doing, and she would actually sleep by the bed at night in the hospital, in case her mother needed anything. And it was just such devotion and care to her mum. But then she told me this story. One day she thought, I wonder just if this is going to be my mother's last illness, if she's going to survive. So she went to a medium in Perth. And the medium, was well known, and said it's very easy. It will cost you just 20 Aussie dollars. So she handed over a 20 Aussie dollar note to this medium. And the medium said, all I need to know is the hospital, the ward number, the room number, and your mum's name. And I'll leave my body and go and check out, how your mum is. And so this medium sort of went unconscious, went into a trance. And about 5 or 10 minutes later, she came out of the trance. And the first thing she did, even before she opened her mouth, this medium gave the $20 note back to this Thai daughter. And then straight away the Thai daughter said, why are you giving the money back? And couldn't you find my mum? She said, oh yeah, I found the hospital, I found the ward, I found the room. But I couldn't go through the door. There's a big force field around your mother. Who is she? It was only then this Thai girl said to the medium, oh, she's a Buddhist nun. She's been a nun for about 30 years. And at that, the medium got so angry and snatched the $20 note back and said, you've been wasting my time. People like me can't get close to people like that. And I remember she was saying that, and that is so true. If you keep a very strong virtue, even like good mediums, they can't get close to you. And this is what the medium expressed it like, as a big force field around you. Never underestimate the power of virtue. It does protect you in more ways than you can ever expect. And that's why I've told quite a few people that even like, just even like ghosts, lost spirits, they are afraid of you. And especially of monks. They're terrified of monks. The virtue, and I mean good monks, the virtue and the power is just too strong for them. But anyway, that's with black magic. So basically, people can give me black magic chocolates. That's the only black magic they can do to someone like me. Ajahn, have you ever met a ghost or spirit? Yes. If you have, what did you do? These are true stories, okay? I told enough jokes. When I was on that 5th year as a monk, that was when you got your basic training, your Ajahn Chah's confident enough that you can look after yourself. And so I went walking from Ubon province, that was from the monastery where I spent the range retreat before, and walking all the way to Sakonnakhon. I had a vow to walk all the way to see one of the monks I really was inspired by. His name was Ajahn Ben. And on the way, whenever I was in no rush, because that's a nice thing when you are on this, the first year after you completed your basic training, you could walk wherever you want. You had to carry everything with you. And you hadn't no suitcases. I just had a bowl, the mosquito net umbrella, and a bag. And that's all you needed to survive. It was so light, and it was everything you owned in the whole world you carried on your back. And soon you kept on things which were not really necessary, the just-in-case items, they soon disappeared. And it was a most wonderful feeling of freedom. When you got to any crossroads, you can turn left, right, straight on, or turn back again. You had no deadlines, no destinations, nothing you needed to do. You were totally free. And even where you slept at night, this was like Southeast Asia, and these monks, and I had all that equipment, you could sleep anywhere. Just find a nice tree, put up your mosquito net umbrella, and meditate and sleep underneath it. Now that was one of the times when you saw snakes. You were laid down or just meditating, sitting up, and the little snake will crawl right past you. There's no fear at all, because they were also used to forest monks living out in the jungle. So there's no fear. It's just these were, your friends in the forest, part of life. And on the moon days, you try to get to a nice forest temple so you can do the patimokkha ceremony. That was one of our obligations. And also, maybe have a good shower. And if there's anything else which you needed, any medicines or something, you could get them. So I stayed at this monastery with this monk Ajahn Suwat, Tamsi Gao, I still remember the name. And for a couple of nights, and then afterwards, it was like you had like a free pass to all these forest monk hotels. You didn't need to pay anything. You just, said hello, paid respect to the senior monk, and you had a hut to stay in. It was just such a privileged life. It wasn't elaborate, but it was still, you had a hut to stay in, you had food in the morning on arms round. You never needed to worry about anything. So I was going to this town of Sakonakon near the end of the journey, and so I asked the monk, how far a walk away is it? And he said about 2 hours, 2 days. It was 2 days walk away. And I asked the other question, which I really wanted to ask, is there a nice cave, midway between here and my destination, Sakonakon? And he said, yes, there is. But, he said, there is a ghost in there. And this was a senior forest monk telling me this. And he said, make sure your practice of meditation is okay and your precepts are okay, but a couple of my monks who stayed there have gone mad. And when it's like a senior monk tells you this, you realize that he's telling you this out of compassion and out of truth. And so I said, I want to try it out. And my character, it's interesting. You want to find this out, There's a scientist in me. So I walked all day, and then I got to the village, and this was the village where the cave was. I didn't know where the cave was myself. But my local northeast language, speech, was perfect. So I could talk to the villagers and ask where the cave was. And one of them took me to the cave. It's a brilliant, beautiful cave on the hillside. There was this spring right next to it, and it had beautiful water for drinking and for bathing. And so I bathed there, and the man who was looking after me just to take me there, from the local village, I walked there by myself, and he couldn't get away quick enough. He wanted to go home, because it was getting late in the evening, the sun was going down. He didn't want to be there after dark. And I said, is this because of the ghost? He said, yes. He said there was, deeper in the cave, there was a skeleton. He wouldn't show me exactly where it was, for obvious reasons, would you? So there was a lovely bench in the front of the cave, or just inside, and that was where you could meditate and rest at night. I set up my mosquito net umbrella and waited for the ghost to come. Honest, that was my intention. I come all this way, I wanted to see the ghost. Sorry, that's not the ghost, it was a long time ago. And so I waited and waited. And I could meditate for long periods of time. I waited and waited and waited and waited and waited. And I've been walking all day, and it got very, very late. And I thought, I didn't have a clock, but you knew it was late. And I thought, I've had enough. This ghost either doesn't exist, or this ghost is messing around with me. So I lay down, and you put your robe on top of you, it's like a blanket. And as soon as I did that, I heard something running right up to me. And stopping right next to me. You realized it was a ghost. You know what I did? I scolded the ghost. I said, I've been waiting for you all the evening, and now you decide to come? Get out of here. That's the way to treat ghosts. Show them who's boss. And that was it. The ghost knew who was boss, and I wasn't scared of it, so I just left. So that's what I did. Did I do the right thing? Sorry?
You speak in Thai to the ghost?
In Isan language. That's a northeast dialect.
In case he's not a local, just in case.
No, in case I've often thought of this. What language do spirits, ghosts, heavenly beings speak? It's mostly mind to mind. So, you may think you're speaking local language, Isan language, you think they're locals too, and so that's what you hear as well. But they could be actually, this was such a remote area, they had to be locals. Okay. Sometimes I've got to be careful because of my monastic rules, but I've said this before, so if I have caused any problems to myself, then it's already been done. Even earlier in Wat Barnana Chart, there used to be a cremation ground. Actually still is. So many people have died there, and the cremations have been held there. And so even in the early days you get into some nice meditation. I remember once, I was outside of my body, and then I went looking for ghosts in the forest. And that's my character, because it's again a scientist. Are there any really here? And so I saw a few of them congregated at night time, and then I went up to them, and then they turned around and they said, "You can see us?" Yeah. And they were the ones who were terrified. And they started, I said, "Don't need to run away, I'm not going to harm you." And that's where, you found out that ghosts are scared of monks. And it's even in their culture, and laymen and lay women are scared of the power of monks. They don't want to do anything to harm you. And ghosts especially. So, and then I asked them, I said, "Well, is there anything I can get for you?" It's kind. And then they said, talking to each other, and they said, "Chili paste."
Chili paste?
Chili, yeah. It's they said that in the Isan. it was gel. It's a type of chili paste. So I tried my best the next morning, if there was any offered, to take some and leave some for them. They can't eat it, but just a gesture that people are looking after them. That's really important. That's how to look after ghosts.
Ajahn, can I ask a question?
Yeah.
So in Buddhism, you said may all beings be happy. A ghost part of being?
Yes. If you look at the Buddhist cosmology, it's very Indian cosmology. Heavenly beings, really not so high heavenly beings, different levels of heavens, and then human beings. Just below human beings, you have the animals, and below the animals there are the ghosts.
So you can be reborn as a ghost?
Yeah. It's huge. That's one of the reasons why, if you do meet like a spirit, sometimes those ghosts they don't last that long. Your job is to try and remind them you're dead. We try to give them some good karma. That's why we share merits with people who have died. If you haven't got enough good karma to actually go up to a much better realm than being a ghost, then we'll help you. So we do some ceremonies sometimes. And the ceremonies, you give some food to the monks, or you build a hall or offer a Buddha statue or something, or do something which is of generosity, or you vow to keep the 8 precepts, for the next few days. And when you do things like that, you dedicate the merits, to that deceased ghost, and then hopefully that's enough just to bump them up, like upgrade them, so they don't have to live in that ghost world. But one of the nice things is because that no one really knows too much about them, that human beings get scared. And there's so many movies about ghosts. And they're all just totally fabricated, made up, not truthful at all. But they're fun to watch simply because people like to get excited. We love to be scared. That's why when I asked that first night, do you want to hear a ghost story? So many people said yes, but they didn't really. It's the excitement factor. But anyway, I did also tell you about the heavenly beings as well. Remember the Pepsi story? That wasn't here. Sometimes I give so many talks, I forget which one I told here. I told this recently. And the reason why it comes to my mind was that this happened the next day. After scolding the ghost, then I carried on my walk to Sakonnakhon. It was a very hot day, a very remote area of Thailand, the Phupan district. And when I was walking there, it was a very hot day. I didn't have any water. My water supply had run out. And I was really sort of suffering, for a heat stroke or just lack of water in my system. And then I came to a ridge of the mountains, and I could see in the valley there was a small village. And I knew from experience that in that village there'd always be one house was the general store. There they would have things like kerosene and matches and cigarettes and Pepsi. And the Pepsi was what they used to use to overcome lack of water, tiredness, heat, being overcome by the heat. And they would often offer a bottle of Pepsi to a monk. So I thought, if there are really heavenly beings, it's in the culture of the forest monks. If anyone is really in trouble, sometimes the forest monks can help, the heavenly beings can help you. Just like in the Christianity, angels helping good people. One of those stories, which I always remember reading, I always was quite inspired by. There was this monk, I think it was Lumpur Orn, and he was practicing for the rains retreat in Burma. And that was during the time of the Second World War. And when Thailand was conquered by Japan, and Japan and Thailand were now like considered allies, and the British over in Burma regarded any Thai monk as a potential spy. And so this Ajahn Orn was told by his hosts, who were Burmese monks, you better get out of Burma as fast as you can. Because, if you get stopped by the British, my ancestors, they didn't have that good a reputation in those days. You'd be in big trouble. So, and they said, you can't go by the normal roads because the British will be patrolling them. You have to go just by the mountains, through the jungle. And so that's what he did. And those mountainous paths and jungle paths, no one lives in them. It's only animals. And they weren't as dangerous as just the fact that there was no one to give you any food. And so this monk hadn't eaten for days. And the paths in those jungle areas were just really steep. Because I remember just spending a range retreat on the Thai side of the border, close to the Burmese border, and it was really, really hard just going up these mountains and down again. And he was getting so tired, so exhausted, he really thought he would not make it, that he will die. And so that's when he made his resolution. He was a good monk. He became a famous monk. And he said, if there are heavenly beings, if there are, I'm a good monk, I keep my precepts, and I meditate, and I'm trying to do the best to serve. If there are heavenly beings, can they please help me? And according to his tale, what happened next, he turned a corner of the path in the jungle, and then in the middle of the path ahead of him, there was a man standing. And the first thing about the man, he was clean and well dressed. Dressed like a person in Bangkok, not like a person in the jungle. And if you've ever been in the jungle, the people who actually live there, they just have rags. They don't have good clothes. And number two, this man who was just standing there had like a tiffin can, inside the binto. And that was what people only in Bangkok, would use. The bottom tray was for rice, then they had like curry and maybe another curry, maybe some fruit on the top. That's what they would use to transport food. And so, that was really weird. According to our tradition, this is in the northeast of Thailand, if you go on alms round, you have to walk and not say anything, not speak to people. And you don't look to the left or look to the right. You keep your awareness like walking meditation, just a body length in front of you, and you walk. And if somebody wants to offer you anything, they'll put their hand up. If it's a man, Nimon Kwap. If it's a woman, Nimon Ka. That's a way of advising the monk they want to offer you something, so the monk stops. As he walked past, this man said nothing. Until he just walked past, and then he said, Nimon Kwap. And so the monk opened the lid of his bowl, and this man put hot food, temperature hot, not chili hot, fresh rice, just maybe cooked, it was like hot like you would get straight from the kitchen here. And delicious, high quality food. And this monk, what on earth is this man doing in the middle of the jungle? with food already prepared, hot food. And so this monk, he broke a rule. The monk looked at him and said, "Where are you from?" The man never answered, but lifted up a finger and pointed upwards. That's what he did. That's what the monk said, and he's a really good, honest monk. And that was enough food to keep him going until he made the end of the journey. Heavenly being. So when I was dehydrated and saw there was a village down in the valley, I made my resolution. I was a good monk. And I was really thirsty. And I hadn't come across any spring or well or river. And I said, I'm doing the right thing, trying to be a good monk, going on this walk, to go to a lovely monastery. If there are heavenly beings, if there are, can you please give me a Pepsi? That's what I asked. So when I got down into the village, I behaved like a good monk should. I just didn't look to the left or to the right, didn't say anything, and just walked slowly through the village. And I could see the corner of my eye, I was just passing the general store. And as I walked past, no one stopped me. No one. I kind of thought, well, at least I know now there's no such things as heavenly beings. But that was when I heard someone running after me. "Nimon Krop!" I hadn't mentioned anything. I hadn't opened my mouth. I hadn't asked for anything. I just walked slowly past. "Nimon Krop!" And when I turned around, what did I see? This man had a bottle of Pepsi for me. "Nimon Krop!" And I thought, that's interesting. But when I did that and saw the bottle of Pepsi, I kind of thought, maybe coincidence. Because very often the people will offer you a bottle of Pepsi, especially if they realize you've been walking a long distance. But then, "Nimon Krop!" Another man ran up to me. "Nimon Krop!" A woman ran up to me. "Nimon Krop!" Another man. "Nimon Krop!" Another woman. I might get the women and men the wrong way around, but nevertheless, eventually I received 9 bottles of Pepsi Cola. No one in their right mind would give 9 bottles of Pepsi Cola to a monk, no matter how thirsty he was. They only did that because that couldn't have been human beings, or either the heavenly beings had influenced those humans to keep giving me more and more Pepsis. And then I lined them all up on this bench, and I think, okay, I admit it, there are heavenly beings. And honestly, that was the only explanation you could ever have. And then I just drank a little bit from each one. And then there was enough kids in that village, I gave the rest to the kids. There's no way you could drink anymore. So that was my heavenly being story. They're real. I don't know. Do you want the last heavenly being story? Okay. This is again a weird one, but totally true. There was a young man who went to Thailand as a Peace Corps volunteer. And those Peace Corps volunteers in Thailand, I knew this because you speak with the local villagers and they just really looked down on these Peace Corps volunteers. They had a good heart, they had no idea what they were doing. So the local villagers tolerated them. And so this man, he'd finished his tour of duty in the Peace Corps, And he thought, I'm in Thailand now, I kind of admire the culture. It would be wonderful just to try out being a Buddhist monk for a little while. And you could be a Buddhist monk for a short term if you wish. It wasn't like a commitment for life. So this is a wonderful opportunity to ordain as a Buddhist monk, see what it was like, and then, if it really works out, wonderful. But then, how do you become a Buddhist monk? He was staying in a hotel, he asked the concierge. And the concierge, he knew other places where Westerners would go, but not how to become a monk. He had a really vague idea, he tried his best, and the concierge said there is a monastery called Wat Bawon in the center of Bangkok, and sometimes Western monks stay there. So he said, that would be a good place to start. But what do I do? He said, well, get a tiffin can with food, and then when the monks come out in the morning for alms round, offer to put some food in one of the monks' bowl, and then tell them, I want to become a monk. That's not the best advice, but at least it was some advice. So this American, he went to Wat Bawon early in the morning, too early in the morning. Everything was locked up. And believe it or not, that time in the morning was very few people in the street outside the monastery. It was too early. So he was walking up and down, not knowing what to do next, when a Thai man came up to him, spoke perfect English, and said, can I help you? What are you walking up and down here for? And he told his story. He wanted to become a monk, didn't know what to do. And the Thai man very kindly said, you've come way too early, but never mind. I've got the keys, I can let you in and show you around until the monks come out for alms round. So this Thai man opened this gate. And I know this, and I know Wat Bawon so well. Sometimes I would stay there when I was doing my visa. So he opened this gate, and they walked in, and they went into the main ordination hall in Wat Bawon. And please know that Wat Bawon is a royal temple, and that's where members of the Thai royal family get ordained. This is not an ordinary temple. So anyway, this Thai man opened up the door of the ordination hall, turned on the electricity, and then they spent amazing 2 hours together where this Thai man was explaining all the murals on the wall of this temple. And in detail, even knowing who sponsored it and why. A wealthy person, their son died of typhoid or something, and that's why he donated that. This American said it was fascinating. And time passed, and the Thai man, he got to the last mural, and he said, well, the monks are going to come out in a few minutes, so it's probably best if you go out the way you came in, and there'll be an old monk coming out soon. And when you see him, that's the monk to offer the food to, because he can make sure that you can start the process of ordination as a Buddhist monk. So that's what happened. The American went out with his binto of food, and he offered it to this old monk who came out while this Thai man locked up. And then they started the process of training. You have to learn some of the rules and the chanting. And the problem was, the monk they assigned to this Westerner to train him, his English was not that good. So the monk to the American complained, can you please get another monk to help me train? I can't understand this Thai monk. And that's when the other monk said, this monk is the best English speaker amongst all our monks. And that's when the Westerner said, what about that temple attendant who met me the first day? What temple attendant? The one who let me in to this gate and let me into the temple and showed me around. That gate I know that gate. Even I am not allowed to go through that. That's the royal gate. The only people who are allowed to go through that gate are members of the Thai royal family. And no layman has a key for that gate. And even no layperson has a key for that main hall. And even where he said they turn the electricity on, you can't turn the electricity on there. It was so weird, I'm not exaggerating. It's so weird they took him straight to the head monk of the monastery. The head monk, I guess I've known him very well for so many years. He's passed away now. That was Somdet Jnana Sangwara. He became the head monk of Thailand for a while. And anyway, they took him to see this monk, and this head monk just listened for a few minutes and then said, "Stop," and brought in the secretary. He said, "Take this all down. This is really something strange." So they wrote this all down. It's in the history books of Wat Bhawan. Some years ago, when I was invited to give a talk in the Thai embassy in Singapore, when I was telling this story, or just afterwards, the ambassador, the Thai ambassador to Singapore, sort of stood up and said, "This is not a question, but I just want to let you know that I'm the board of directors, the lay board of Wat Bhawan, and I've seen that story. It's exactly as you said, Ajahn Brahm. That's in our records." And so it was written down, and then the head monk said, "No, well, this can't be happening. No layperson's got those keys." And even the head monk did not know as much about those paintings on the walls of the temple as he was just being told. Those monasteries were built a couple hundred years ago. 150 or 180 or something. And so, when they finished writing it all down, the head monk, the abbot, just couldn't help but saying, "Well, who was he? What did he look like?" And this bit, I'm unsure whether this American actually said this, but he said something similar. "I don't know what he looked like. They all look the same." If you don't know people, when you first see them, they're just Thai. But he said one strange thing about this gentleman was he was wearing traditional Thai clothes, not modern Thai clothes. That doesn't help us, What did he actually look like? What was his face like? And can you describe somebody's face, what they look like? I just saw Della what do? You usually look up or something. That's almost like a reaction. So this is what this American did. He looked up and scratched his head. Then he froze. It was him. That was a man who met me. There was a portrait of this man on the wall. Don't look over there, there's no portrait over there. It was King Rama IV. King Rama IV, one of the former kings of Thailand, who had actually sponsored that temple. He was the one who built it, and not with his own hands, but he was the one that was his kind of gift to the nation. And if you know anything of Thai culture, that's weird. Because this Westerner is real. He didn't know who the heck it was, but he saw a portrait of him, and he was one of the former kings of Thailand. So anyway, that's what happens sometimes. It's a heavenly being who came to help an American who wanted to become a monk. I told that story to a few people, like, not I was scared, but just, sometimes people help. Ooh. Anyway, how do we break the mind from the tendency of grasping and wanting to control? Because it's much more fun, more peace. You achieve objectives much better when you don't grasp and control things. I don't know about when you grow up, or when you were growing up. Your parents, did they try to control you? Again, I don't know my good luck in this lifetime, but my father, he would never talk about his father, my paternal grandfather, who died before I was born. But eventually, this is my grandfather, at least I should know something about him. And that's when my father said, please excuse this language, but you have no other way to say it. He said, your father was a bastard. Oh no, it shocked me. It shocks me even now. And then my father had to explain. His father, my paternal grandfather, I never met, was into domestic abuse. He had a very difficult life, and he was a plumber, my grandfather, and he would come home drunk most times and take off his belt and whip any kid which was in the way, including my father many times. He said, for no reason. And then he would start on his wife, my father's mum. And he said, I remember him telling me this. He said, that hurt so much more than when I was on the end of that whipping. He couldn't protect the one person he really loved, which was his mum. And listening to that, remembering that, you could feel the pain of that. And then he said, when I was experiencing that, he said he made a vow. He said, if ever I survive, if ever I have kids, I will never hit them. And I was one of those kids. He survived. And I remember my brother and I being naughty, as young boys would be, and then my father coming into our bedroom with a slipper to spank us, and he couldn't do it. He just went out again. I remember that. There's no way he could ever hit us, because what he had endured. And also, I remember I remember my father's life, and when it's close to his death anniversary, then I do, when you're doing some sharing of merits, I join in. When I'm doing the chanting Yata Wari Waha, I also remember my dad and share my merits with him. Because I remember all these wonderful times and what he taught me. He died when I was only 16. But I do remember just having the afternoon off school one day. And when I had the afternoon off school, with my friends, we went back to my father's council apartment. In other words, very small, very poor, the lowest of the low. But then we had a game of, what's it called, spud gun fights. Had these little guns like toys, and you get a potato and put the end into the potato, and then like a little bit of compressed air, just pressing the trigger, and the spud, or the part of the spud, would shoot out at your whoever you were aiming for. We were boys playing, so we used our little apartment for a spud gun fight. In the afternoon, we had the afternoon off school. They never ever thought. My father was supposed to be at work, but he was actually asked to go and get something. He was driving past, and so he just came and got something from the apartment. And he saw us, and I was terrified. My father had come in and caught us playing around. All the sofas and the chairs were upside down. and there was spud all over the place. And I was really scared. And then my father just said, okay, please make sure you clean up after you, and he went out. I remember the reaction of all my friends. Wow, you've got such a cool dad. And of course we cleaned up afterwards. We're just having, what young kids will do. I don't know, 10 or 11-year-olds. And so I always remember my father like that. So, oh crikey, I'm really getting into this now. So, he would never be someone who grasped. I must admit that's true. He had a hard time making ends meet, but nevertheless we had a very happy family. Am I boring you? No. Okay. Just tell one interesting thing about my father. Even though he was never a violent man, he almost had a fight with one of my teachers. And the teacher he chose to have a fight with, this man, he was my maths teacher, and I'd only been in the high school for about a couple of years. And it was a parents-teachers evening. You go to your son's school, and the teacher says, how your son is going. Mm-hmm. And so he went to this school, and the teacher, he was the captain of a tank during the Second World War and got blown up in Italy. And when he was blown up in Italy, Italian doctors actually had to do surgery on his head and turn the scalp around this way, and he only had half a finger, and he really, for a schoolboy, he really looked fierce. He did look like a monster because he'd been blown up in a tank. But that didn't stop my father from almost having a fight with him. And I only found this out because the other parents of these my friends in this class, told the other parents saw it and they told their children, and their children told me. I thought, why? And you soon figured it out. Now my father was, what they call like working class. He would have been so happy if his ideal for his kids would maybe to own a pub or play for a soccer team or something. That would be the peak. But when this teacher said how good I was at maths and that there was a very good chance I was going to end up in a university like Cambridge, that was too much for my father. Honestly, because he thought that I was taking his son away from him. And he wouldn't be able to relate to me anymore, going to a posh university like that. And that was way beyond the world where he was comfortable with. And the idea of the school removing his son from him was intolerable. It never really happened because he died before he ever went to university. But nevertheless, I kind of always remember that, and just how he would sacrifice anything for his children. And that's why, you feel those, just like a mother loves her only child, will sacrifice her life for her only child. So that's what my dad would do. And he demonstrated that. That's why he got a lot of care. It wasn't grasping. It was just, I'm going to protect you no matter what. And that's what he said. He was the one who taught me the door of his heart would always be open to me, no matter what I ever do. Even if I went to Cambridge, he'd still keep his door open for me. Okay. Are you okay? Not tired? No. Okay. Okay. This is not a question, but a reflection and a little suggestion. You mentioned that we would not know when the deep meditation will come to us. Yeah? So I'd like to suggest at the end of this retreat, you please issue each of us a deep meditation certificate to keep us safe, just in case we will go into a deep meditation somewhere, but not in Jhana Grove. It's written like, this person may be in deep meditation state. If he or she has found no response to the outside world, but with a warm body, please don't bury him. Bury him is not the problem, it's cremation. And leave him alone, so that we will bring along the certificate. We'll meditate outside Jhana Grove to keep us safe, just in case. Please give a consideration. Thank you, thank you, thank you. If you can actually even fluke one of those deep meditations, it's amazing. There's some good karma somewhere. I don't know why, but maybe it's because, like heavenly beings recognize something strange is going on in your room. And I did mention that Greg. Yeah. I mean, that was really a surprise for him. But it kind of changed his life. But he was fine. No worry. With the ongoing war, I find it difficult to watch the news, especially about the impact on kids. I choose to ignore due to unbearable sadness after. What are other options to practice kindness and compassion on things we can't control? There's always something you can do. So you know that sometimes I say these things, there's something you can do. Then people come up to me and say, Ajahn Brahm, what are you doing? So a little thing which we did do in our Buddhist society in Western Australia, that some of the talks, which I give so many talks, but they're in English. So we've got this gentleman, Radhan his name is, who is now in Czechoslovakia, in Prague, and he doesn't translate the talks, just dub the talks into Ukrainian and into, I insisted, don't just do it in Ukrainian, do it in Russian as well. He dubs the talks and puts them on the internet for free. And so I've been encouraging that. But then he said some time ago, look, there is still the people who have to translate it and then dub it. And they have to be able to speak Russian fluently or speak Ukrainian fluently. So remember the last time I was in Hong Kong? I mentioned to you, can we raise some funds for this? And you did that. That's what a beautiful thing to raise funds for. And so, having raised the funds, then I managed, I don't care, I don't think anything will harm me these days, that I managed to bring the funds to Perth, and then from Perth the funds went over to Czechoslovakia, and then I used to help do a small thing, just have some non-violent talks to inspire people. Don't care whether what country you are born in and which side you are fighting for. Still, please be kind, be gentle and non-violent. That's a little thing you can do. But at least it's something. And who knows where that will lead. It makes you doing something positive. You can't do everything, but this is something. Dear Ajahn Brahm, is the action of neutering stray cats a bad karma? I have neutered some in the past. They have become very calm, fat and healthy. You see, fat does not mean being unhealthy. They are perfectly keeping the third precept as they no longer have the sexual urge. There is one tomcat I really want to neuter. He keeps disturbing other cats. But there is one senior monk said it is really bad karma for doing so. Now I'm in doubt. Now your intention is pretty good. So what to do? You take that cat and look at it and said, do you want to be neutered? It's your call. Do you want to be fat and healthy as well? Sometimes I think it's a pretty good call myself. It's one of the reasons why that when I travel in Australia, my preferred airline is Virgin. I think that's appropriate for a monk. Okay, no more comment. You told us that the hell realm has no door. We can escape any time we want. But in the Nimijataka states that wrongdoers were punished and tortured. Can you please explain this Nimijataka in detail? Yes. Who does the torturing in a jail or in a hell realm? Whoever does that torturing, that's incredibly bad karma they're doing. What actually is really happening? What is really happening, the only person who tortures you is yourself. You feel you need to be punished. You feel guilty. And how many times you've done something, you've really hurt something, and sometimes you can't sleep at night. Sometimes you destroy the happiness you have in life. That idea of guilt is so pernicious. If you still feel guilty and you cannot forgive yourself, then of course you're continuing torturing yourself. Even when that actually appears just like something real. Remember the hell realms, they are also mind-made realms. And so the hell realm, the real hell realm, the mind-made realm, any time you have some compassion, forgiveness, kindness, your mind cannot create a realm like that anymore. And the thing is, you can't stay there. There was, over in Bodhpador, and many of you from that area, where are you? Bodhpador people. That when I first went there, the reason why we have the Bodhpador stupas out there, the Venerable Sri Panyawada, he liked what I was doing. So when I told him we're going to make a retreat center here, that he said, well, may I offer to you, him and his supporters, the stupas here, and also the two lions as you enter. You see those two welcoming lions? I was told that we got them the wrong way round. The one on the left should be on the right. Have you noticed that? The one on the right should be on the left. I said, no, you're wrong. This is down under. We do everything the other way around in Australia. But anyway, I remember the first time I went there, the Venerable Sri Panyawada very graciously gave me the guided tour around the big Bodhpador stupa. And he started on the lower level, and one of the carvings on the lower level was of this man with a razor wheel cutting into his head. And he said the story was that he pushed his mother over and hurt her. And as a result of that bad act, that he went down to a hell realm, and he said for I think 360 years or something, he would have this razor wheel like torturing him every moment of his existence down there. And then this other man came down there, and the razor wheel flew off this first man's head into this new man's head. And the first man said, I was told that I would have to enjoy this for 360 years. And then another man who'd done a similar act would come, I would be free, and now he would have to endure this pain. And the razor wheel fell into this second man. And the second man said, it's a terrible thing I've done, just sort of injuring my mum like that. And so he said, 360 years is not enough for what I've done. I'm going to take 3 times that. So the next 2 people don't have to endure what I'm feeling right now. So the next 2 people won't have to endure that pain. He had a mind of compassion and kindness. And that razor wheel just exploded. And he went up to a heaven realm immediately. You can't fake that. There has to be his own experience. One act of compassion means the heaven realm, what actually creates it, will destroy it. These are personalized experiences. That's why I say, and I maintain this, the doors of any hell realm are open. You can walk out once you have enough understanding, wisdom and compassion. That's also the reason why, you've read this, I'm sure, that if you do become a stream winner, then you never go down to hell ever again. Doesn't mean you've extinguished all your bad karma. It means that you realize that punishment is not necessary anymore. It's a very stupid response to trying to do better things next time. People just keep blaming themselves and punishing themselves for some things which people tell you you're a bad person, bad boy or bad girl. And these are people in authority. And sometimes you believe that and your happiness level goes down because you don't allow yourself to be happy. You're into punishment. It's not necessary. Please don't do that. Please have forgiveness. And you never have to go to any hell realm ever again. You're not sent down there. You decide to go down there. I was teaching like that for such a long time. But then I thought, that's not exactly what the sutras say. But then when I gave that statement and talked to the monks, Ajahn Brahmali came up to me and said, no, Ajahn Brahm, what you're saying is perfectly correct. In the sutras, you are not judged like in a court of law. You are made to remember what your acts were. And then you choose, what is necessary as a result of that good or bad actions. I can never understand why a heavenly being, and if you're a heavenly being like in Buddhism like Yama, why a heavenly being would send anyone down to hell? And I sometimes contemplated, if I was that heavenly being, and say Adolf Hitler came up, and I had to decide, where he's got to go. There's no way I could ever send an Adolf Hitler to hell. Instead, what I would say, you really loved your mum, and you were most beautiful poem about your mum. You were a bit deluded, but I think the forgiveness is the best. So I'd say, I totally forgive you, Mr. Hitler, and you can go up to a nice heaven realm. But before you go up to a heaven realm, if you don't mind, can I shave that moustache off? And change your hairstyle. Otherwise, some people will get confused. Kindness, that's what kindness is. Forgives. And if this Adolf Hitler, if that was actually real and that happened, this was my kind of fantasies. I would think that Adolf Hitler would get so inspired. He's been forgiven. What that would feel like. And that would have such a huge effect upon his future conduct. Anyway, is it okay just to leave your family responsibility to pursue your own happiness, to become a monk? Is that selfish? It can be. That's one of the reasons why before we become a monk, we're supposed to ask permission from our parents. I remember doing that with my mum. I said, look, I really want to become a monk. And she said, yeah, I can see that. I said, but I need your permission. Can I have your permission to become a monk over in Thailand? She said, yes, of course. But she said, I would have much rather you've chosen to become a monk next door, in Chiswick or somewhere. Because what my mother wanted was not to deny me my happiness, but she wanted me to be close by, so she could see me. And you know, the worst thing which she said about having a son as a Buddhist monk is she could never hug me. That was against the rules. But you know what I did? I said, compromise, Mum, you're my mum. So, when I first come to the airport to visit, you can have one hug. And when I leave, you can have another hug. But in between, no hug. That's my compromise. So when I would arrive at London Heathrow Airport, and she'd be ready to hug me, I said, well, just one moment, Mum, I'd look around to make sure there's no Thai people watching. I thought that was, that's not wrong. You can feel that's your mother, and that's what she needs. So anyway, that's what I did. Was it my own happiness I pursued? You might say, I pursued your happiness, so I could be a good teacher. Shall I stop now? It's 9:30. Yeah, I'll go on a bit longer.
Yes.
Which one?
Well, you're too tired.
I'm not tired, honestly. What happens when you're teaching, you have energy from the talk, and then as soon as I go out, halfway between here and my cottage, then I'll feel tired. It happens all the time. Well, anyway, another one here. I read one story about the Buddha and Venerable Devadatta. It said that at the end of life of Venerable Devadatta, the Buddha knew that Devadatta comes to visit him, but Buddha said Venerable Devadatta would never be able to meet him and will go down to one of the hells. The question is, if the Buddha knew about that, why is he not coming out from the monastery and see Venerable Devadatta so Venerable Devadatta doesn't have to go to Avicii? He said at that time, because of the bad karma of Devadatta, it was not, no one could stop him, only he could, only Devadatta could, by having a beautiful forgiveness. But Devadatta couldn't do that at that time. But the Buddha also said that in a future life that Devadatta would become an arahant. So it would be a longer path for him, but eventually the story would have a happy ending. Dear Ajahn Brahm, you always mention that we have to pay attention to breath in, breath out, and enjoy the breathing during meditation. Since only living things breathe, I guess a ghost doesn't breathe. Are you sure? Okay, you asked for this. There was this man. He runs the Thai boxing gym. He came here to, just to help when we first opened this place. And his neighbour was a builder, and his neighbour had a dog, and the poor dog eventually just got a bad cancer. So the builder took his dog to the vet, and the vet euthanized the dog. The next day, when the builder woke up and got out to go to work, a dog ran into his house, looking exactly the same as the dog which was just been euthanized. And this dog which ran into his house went to every corner of his house where the dog would usually curl up and sleep. Just curled up and then got up again. He went out to the back of the house where there was a leaky tap, and that was always where the dog would take a drink. And then he went upstairs where the bedrooms were. He's a builder, always gets up early. And so the wife was in bed, half asleep. And when the dog went into the bedroom, the dog did what it always would do when it was alive. It just lifted up its head to kiss the mistress good morning. And the mistress was, the builder's wife was half asleep, so she did what she did every morning, kiss the dog back. Be very careful when you first get up in the morning, otherwise you'll end up like her, kissing a ghost. And then the dog went downstairs and then out through the front door with the builder and went to jump into the builder's vehicle to go to work like he would always do. And at that point the builder said, no, that's enough. And so the dog turned around and ran away and never seen again. It was the ghost's last visit to the house, the last sleep in its favourite corners, a drink from its favourite tap, and kissing the owner, the mistress of the house. Does ghosts have breath? You bet. Anyway, I kind of like that story. It's kind of sweet. And the little dog was just so attached to the house and the people. Just one more time. Okay. Why does the life force of an arahat stay if there is no craving for being? No craving for being, but the duties to perform to help other beings. Why did the Buddha stay? Because he had a job to do. To create this Buddhism, to get it going, to create Bhikkhuni Sangha and Bhikkhu Sangha, and to create all these wonderful laymen and laywomen, to make it so strong it's going to last for many hundreds of thousands of years. So that's why the life force of the Buddha stayed, that's why the life force of arahats stay. If there's nothing they can do, then they depart. There's one of those great arahats was Dabba Malaputta. He became fully enlightened when he was only 7. Previous lives he'd been practicing. And as soon as he became enlightened, you'd expect him just to pass away, because there's plenty of teachers there. But what he did, he managed to be able to focus on this fire element. And because of his incredible meditation, he could make his thumb glow in the dark. And he became so well known that people or monks deliberately arrived in this particular area late at night. And they didn't have flashlights. It was a vast area around Rajagaha. And they deliberately asked to stay in the most distant huts because they wanted to see Dabba Malaputta, his finger glow. And that became his job for the rest of his life, to be the person who took the new monks to their lodgings. Over here, if any monk comes to visit, it's usually Venerable Nibbutto assigns them the places they can stay, but he doesn't have a glowing finger, he uses flashlight. But that became his purpose, something to do. Then Ananda, at the end of his life, it seems to be like, well, there's no reason to doubt this, that because he was a very famous monk at this time, fully enlightened now, and he was with the Buddha for such a long time, he became the go-to monk, in Buddhism at that time. And so a lot of people were following him. They were trying to get into their country so that he would die there. And when they died there, they built a stupa there, and that was very good for business. People would come and worship there. And so he got to the boundaries between these two kingdoms. And the people on the other side of the river said, no, cross now, cross now, cross now. And the ones on this side, no, you stay here, die here. They weren't really interested in keeping him alive. He was 120. They knew he was going to die. Please die in my place, don't die in their place. So what Ananda did, according to the legend, is quite cute. He rose up into the air, exactly between the two rivers, above the middle of the river, between the two kingdoms, and he entered the fire element, in other words, immolated himself. And the two equal piles of ashes fell on either side of the river, so that both kingdoms were happy. That's how fair he was. Dabamala Puta, the one I said who had the finger, that's how he passed away too, rising into the air and immolated. And I remember the last time I was in Hong Kong, when I was talking to that professor at Hong Kong University. And I was talking to him about this stuff because there's many records in Greek philosophy about Buddhist monks. And there was this one mention of this Samana Teja. Samana means monk. And he caused a sensation in the forum at Athens by rising into the air and immolating himself. And that's all it says about it. That's why I was asking that professor, do you know any more about that? Have you done any more research? He said, no, I've read it, but hasn't done much more research about it. That's in the books. I didn't invent that. That was written by some Greek historian so many centuries ago. So it's there. But no one really pays attention to it. Mistake has been made again. The trust is not there anymore. How to deal with this situation? How many times forgiveness should be given regarding to the same mistake, Ajahn? Always one more time. You live in the present moment. Mistakes have been made. What's the purpose of mistakes? To test you. To make your kindness bigger and stronger. If you forgive mistakes, you find a lot of the time that people respond with such amazing respect for you. You're a person who can forgive that. What was that? I hope you read these things. I don't just talk about them. In the Desmond Tutu's and Nelson Mandela's Truth and Reconciliation Commission over in South Africa, where they had a brilliant idea of having amnesty for no matter what terrible crimes happened during the apartheid years and the struggle of the African National Congress to get equity in their land. And when Nelson Mandela was elected the president, he had this full freedom to take revenge. And some of the things which happened, some people say, how can you not seek revenge for what was perpetrated on people? But they made this wonderful suggestion. If someone had done some crime, some extrajudicial killing and torture, as long as they confessed honestly, they would be forgiven. And the reason that caught my attention, that's just so Buddhist. As long as you're honest, you confess what you really did, then forgiveness should be given. There's no punishment in Buddhism. So, what are these cases? This white South African secret police officer was actually confessing how he had tortured and killed one of the black African activists. The wife was listening, or the widow was listening. This was the woman she loved, she committed to. who just disappeared in the middle of the night. It's the first time she found out where he'd gone and what had happened to him. And this white police officer was saying just what he did to him. It's horrendous. And can I say this? I mean, sometimes to make it very clear, the sort of things which go on in these secret police camps all over the world. He said, I remember just reading this, he got this man's male organ, put it on the desk, and drove a nail through it. I mean, that's gross. I mean, it really is gross. And eventually, I think, threw him out the window to his death. And that was in front of the man's wife. She found out how this man was treated and how he was extrajudicially killed. And it was very hard to tell the truth. So hard that this man was shaking and sobbing, and it was a very difficult thing to do. But he eventually told that truth. And after his testimony was given, the wife, the widow, jumped over the barrier. She was incredibly fit and agile. And she managed to avoid the two guards who were there as a last protection against the witness. Just like in a rugby match, she managed to weave around these two guards, and she got the man. And the man just froze in horror. This was a South African police officer. And she put her big arms around him, hugged him, and said, I forgive you. And even when I read that, there was tears in my eyes. You can forgive that? Yes. And apparently the whole courtroom just burst out in tears. That's what forgiveness means. It gives us hope, a way of settling old problems from the past. Maybe the only way. There's something which is like beautiful about that. Anyway, that's how I feel. Oh, I can keep on going for too long. Okay, shall we finish now, or do you want some more? Who wants more? Put your hand up. Who wants less? Okay, so it's time to go now. I've got some more here. Well, we've still got another Q&A tomorrow night, have we? Okay, very good. Please, I apologise for going on so long, but I'll get into it. You forgive me? Thank you. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Oh. Thank you. They're great questions.